with the with the Consumer Protection Act's strict liability regulations and definitions, it has become imperative for people to protect themselves, their businesses, and their employees from incidents that may have legal ramifications, something that happens quite often these days. The reality is that every business is unique and therefore exposed to different risks. Today, I'm speaking to Storm Mhlambi, Senior Manager Liability at Auto & General. Hi, Storm. It's great to see you.
Hi, Rianet. Thank you so much for having me.
Today, we'll have a bit of a conversation around specialist liability insurance, something that is very close to the heart of you and Auto & General. There's a few things that I would like to touch on. So maybe we can start with the importance of specialist liability cover, and maybe you can touch on some of the trends. Have we seen an increase of brokers selling it? Don't they want to sell it? Talk us through that, Storm.
I think the importance of these type of products is that they are there to protect your balance sheet, literally to stop your business from going bankrupt in the event of somebody holding you liable for a mistake that you made. Everybody makes mistakes. So to think that there isn't risk or exposure for your business would be really, really foolish. We haven't seen an increase of brokers selling this business particularly. I think we have our large corporate brokers and large independent brokers who specialize in selling this business because they really understand the products. So they're able to convey the risk and exposures to the clients that they're selling it to. And they also, from the client's perspective, larger organizations are also usually well aware of the exposure that they have and are open to transferring that risk to insurers. On the SME side, it seems a bit more difficult for brokers to sell the cover because they don't really understand the cover themselves. And these products are, I would say, almost impossible to sell, to convince somebody to buy, because insurance is already a grudge purchase. It's almost impossible for a broker to convince a client to buy a product when they can't explain to them why they need it, and how this product is actually going to help and protect them. When people sell car insurance, there's a tangible asset there. They know what they're protecting. With liability products, it's a lot different. So I think that's the biggest reason that we don't see an increase in the smaller to medium-sized broker space.
So in your mind, the biggest barrier is literally just because they don't understand it. There's not really necessarily a budget issue or anything else. It's purely not understanding it. And maybe there are myths and things that they think that is not true. Remember the program Mythbusters? Yes. Some myths are so entrenched in popular belief that we are left stunned when they are proved inaccurate. And maybe there are myths around specialist liability cover. What are some of those myths, Storm?
I think one of the main myths is that we are a very reasonable society. And so people believe that if I didn't mean to do something and it was an accident, I'm not going to be held liable. Like, why would somebody sue me? But it is an ever-increasing consumer-led litigation in South Africa. I think consumers are becoming much more aware of the rights and the recourse that they have, so they are suing more. Another myth is that people won't sue me because I don't have money. I'm a small business. Like, I don't make more than R1 million turnover a year, so who would sue me? They can't sue me for R1 million or 2 million. They can. Yeah. Your business will close down and you would still be liable to pay the balance. So I think those are two ones. And also that litigation only happens to big corporates. People don't believe that small businesses can be sued or held liable. So I think those are some of the myths that lead to people not purchasing insurance. I think, and what fuels it a little bit is for things like motor insurance, you have, if you cause an accident and your car isn't insured and you don't have third-party insurance, the other party's insurance company will pay for their loss and will most likely, in most instances, not recover from you because you don't have insurance and it would just be too costly and they would think that you're a man of straw. But when you own a business, they are able to recover from you. They are able to hold you liable, and you will work until you repay the debt that is owed. So those are some of the myths that I've come across.
Do you think there are certain types of businesses that just believe they cannot think of one reason why they should have insurance? Typical specific type of businesses? Probably. You know,
I would say it's especially people that operate as single person businesses. So like a plumber wouldn't think that he needs insurance when he actually, from a liability insurance, when he actually needs multiple products. Even as a one-man band, you can cause catastrophic loss. We've seen claims from plumbing businesses recently that are in the millions, and it's not large projects that led to the loss.
Sure.
But there is a lot of damage that can be caused by your negligence, be it professional or not. So I think people think if I don't have a large company, I don't employ a lot of people, I don't have a business premises, I don't need that cover.
Is liability insurance expensive? And I know it's a very wide question to ask, but in relation to some of your other products, normal personal lines or whatever. I know it's a difficult question to answer, but is liability insurance expensive, and is some liability products a lot more expensive than others?
So relatively speaking, I would say no, it's not expensive. In consumers' minds, because it's an intangible risk, they find it expensive. And I think from an auto and general perspective, we don't focus too much on price. It's more about quality of service and expert advice that we give. But I think one of the huge barriers to getting a much more insured small business market in specialist liability products is perceived cost. The cost, I think, is, I'm going to use the word affordable. I think it's very affordable. We have put out products that any man in the street could afford. And I'll give you an example. Our broad form product starts at around 150 Rand a month if you have a small exposure. So obviously small turnover, one premises. But it's, to me, that is extremely affordable to ensure that you cover your exposure. There are covers that are much more expensive. And I think it also depends on the type of business that you have, which product would be more expensive. But in general, professional indemnity is more expensive than liability covers. And directors and officers in the last few years, and prior to that, it was always more expensive, but it's become even more so. But even with it being more expensive than a broad form policy, it's still, I think, very affordable.
So now when it comes to claims, so now my client has got some liability covers and it comes to claims, do you sometimes see that there is a misunderstanding from clients? And I think that comes back again to the education part, but is there a misunderstanding sometimes from clients on what is covered on that specific product and what not? And why does it happen so much?
Yes. We see it often. I think the main reason is education, them understanding the product entirely. There's usually a partial understanding. So for example, on broad form, they know that I'm covered for errors that I make or for my negligence if I get sued. But there are exclusions to that. There are caveats to that. There's a deeper understanding. There's entire policy wording that they need to understand and relative to their business specifically. And I think that understanding is not all the way there on every single client. In fact, on most clients that this cover gets sold to. And that's why we see that there's a huge importance in the broker being the intermediary between us and an insured in this process, so that they can take the time to sit down, go through a policy document with the client, and relay it to them in context to their business, so they know from their particular occupancy, their particular business, what they have cover for and what they don't, relative to their risks.
Okay, so we've touched on people don't buy it because they don't understand it. We've touched on claims, and now maybe we can just quickly touch on the risk management side of it. Once again, another education part. How important is it that brokers have that risk management conversations with clients, because it links directly to claims, it links directly to not understanding or understanding their product. And risk mitigation and risk management is so key, and the importance of the broker really understanding their client's business.
Risk management is extremely important to us. We try and do it pre-sale by holding regular seminars with our brokers, explaining the risk management options that they have that they can share with their clients. We also do it post-claim with our clients. Our claims team take them through how they could prevent these losses going forward. I think it's something crucial, because in the same way that you can't contract out of gross negligence and you can be held liable, your insurance policy also doesn't cover gross negligence. So you have to make sure that you take the necessary steps to mitigate your risk pre any event happening. And touch wood, if you take these steps, you will reduce the likelihood of these events happening and we won't have claims. I think even more importantly, it reduces the level of negligence that you've shown if you can show that you've taken steps to mitigate and not being reckless, especially because with liability covers, it's not a tangible risk. So when people choose their limits of indemnity, it's very much what you can afford. And you could likely be sued for more than that. So employing good risk mitigation techniques prior to your loss will make sure that your loss amount is likely to be a bit lower and more likely to fall within the limit of insurance that you have. It might not, but at least it won't be way over. It's just a tool or tools that you can use to minimize your loss. I think for broad form clients, it's really important to make sure that you've got standard operating procedures. If you're working away from your premises, there's a standard way that you do things. These are the checks that you do when you go into a premise. Make sure that you cover other furniture that's around the areas that you're working on, for example. If it's at your premises, that you regularly check that the floors are clear, that there aren't any exposed wires, that you have these regular checks in place to make sure that your environment is safe for clients to visit. And that when your employees are at client premises, that you take precautions to make sure that they aren't likely to damage clients' equipment. So having those standard operating procedures in place is really key. For professional indemnity clients, contracts. So it's from before you even start seeing clients, make sure that you have the correct contracts in place, that you at least have a base that has the standard clauses in, and you can personalize those per contract. But you must ensure that you have that good draft and get legal assistance in getting that draft done. There are legal products available. A lot of insurance insurers have them. We also have a legal product where you have access to contract drafting services. Use them.
Yeah.
And then also, and other key stuff for professional indemnity is making sure you record any interactions that you have with the client, either telephonically or written. Anything that you agree by word of mouth, write it down, get their confirmation in writing. Having those records really could be the difference between paying a claim and not, because we can't rely on hearsay when one party is saying one thing and the other is saying something different. Yeah, I think those are some of the risk mitigation tools that our insureds can use.
You touched briefly on that, but I think it's important to ask specifically, what do you as Auto in General do? You know that there's a gap, you know that there's a lack of education, and you know that there's a lot of things that we as an industry can do to assist the clients to be better prepared for anything that can happen to their business. What does Auto in General do for brokers to make that journey and that conversation with the client an easy one?
I think we have, besides our regular broker engagement seminars that we have, and we take them through a range of topics. We don't just dwell on product specific knowledge sharing. We also, for example, have had sessions where we focus purely on claims and use real claims examples to discuss with brokers, take them through every single claim is different. So it's not possible to say that if this, then that, but in this specific scenario, we explain to them, this is what happened, this is what we did, this is how it could have been done better from the client side. If we had this in place, it would have improved the entire claims experience and minimized the loss. So we run those sessions. We also share some material with them to give them ammunition to explain the products and the covers better to their client. We also have, where brokers do want training sessions, we have our broker manager who spends a lot of time out at clients' premises. She travels to other provinces. She's based in Johannesburg, but she does travel. Or we have been doing a lot of remote training with specific brokerages as well when they request it. And what else?
Very much open door. If you've got a
very
problem,
much open door, and we also offer, if you want to go and see a client and you aren't comfortable with the product, we can accompany you and be present. We aren't brokers, so we don't give advice, but we can be there to support you and explain cover to a client.
Talk to me about your vision for this line of business at Auto in General. Maybe where it started and where you are going.
I think to explain my vision, I need to explain a little bit about my history and also the A&G liability book's history. I've worked predominantly in corporate liability markets for my entire career. Me joining Auto in General was based on the fact that it's a South African insurer. And that it has a small to medium-sized specialist liability strategy. So my vision is to ensure that there's greater awareness of the real risks that are there for businesses from a specialist liability perspective, that they understand how to mitigate that risk, and then ultimately understand the products and how they're able to transfer it. So for me, it's growing that awareness and that translating obviously to a larger take-up in these products. Personal strategy for our A&G book, I want to double the book in 5 years. I think that's entirely possible. We've almost done it in the last 2 years. It's more than doubled. We started in 2011, but slowly. Ken van Sweden started, the late Ken van Sweden started our liability book. And we started with 2 products. We launched, so we had directors and officers and specialist liability. We launched our broad form product in May 2020 during the pandemic.
Sure.
And the take-up has been phenomenal. We've seen huge growth in our broad form space, which was unprecedented because you wouldn't think that people would buy an intangible insurance during a pandemic when so many people were losing their incomes. And so I think it's part of our strategic vision as a company. One of the growth areas that we are focusing on, that we're investing in, is our liability book. And we've done that by also making sure that we have a really strong technical team sitting behind this growth. And it's not an easy thing to put together a strong liability technical team. Mm-hmm. They are hard to find. Yeah. I think we've got the right team now. We've grown, I think, to a team of, I think we've got 8 sales consultants. We've got a underwriting manager. We've got our own specialist lives claims manager. We've also had a broker manager role that we filled towards the end of last year to purely liaise with our brokers. And that broker manager role is a very empowered role. We've got Celeste Aiken, and she is has an underwriting background. So she is fully empowered to make decisions and close deals and quote, which I think is really important. We don't want somebody to go out there and say, oh, can I quote for you? Okay, give it back to me and take it to the office. We want somebody who can explain and discuss and sign things and agree to stuff right there at the broker's shop front.
I wanted to ask you, what is service excellence at Auto in General, and what makes you different and better than any other insurer offering liability insurance? But I think you've really touched on quite a few of that. Is there anything you would like to add?
I think it's so important that you bring that up, because that is the why Auto in General is service excellence. It's expert advice. So we've got a strong expert team that are sitting behind us, but it's also service excellence in making sure that when a client calls in, we make sure we get back to them within a specific amount of time. There's no waiting for days for quotations. We get back to you as soon as possible. I think for our larger clients, and we've got a 48-hour turnaround time. For our smaller clients, it's minutes, and we can get a quote back to you. And I think that is the difference. And that's what's most important to brokers, is that if I want to call and if I want to get information about a product or to understand it better or to understand a quote, I want someone to answer the phone. And I want that person to be able to help me. And if I want terms and I've given you all the information, I want them now. And so we're trying to make sure that we meet that need. And that's been part of why we've geared up this team significantly in the last 2 years. I think when I joined, it was a team of 4.
I think it's a very important thing that you've mentioned, because I've had my ears obviously on the ground. We work and talk to brokers, and turnaround times is a mess, specifically in the liability space, strangely enough, was one of the comments that I received. It's a massive, massive frustration for quotes, specifically a massive frustration for brokers. So people taking accountability when it comes to quotes, when it comes to claims, has been a massive frustration. We've done a survey on FAnews, and we've seen the numbers. So hearing that there's a big focus on turnaround times, I think would be good for anyone to hear. So well done on that. So a last word to our FAnews audience, Storm.
I think for the FAnews audience and for FAnews, for you and the team, Rianet, just thank you so much for creating an encouraging engagement within the industry. It's always interesting I read FAnews, and I always want to see what everyone is doing, what other companies are experiencing, and also for promoting thought leadership in the industry. I think that is something that's really key. It's got people sitting back and not just doing their day-to-day, their 9 to 5, doing their job. They actually take time out of their days to sit back and think. And I think that's really, really, really key. So thank you for that. And yeah, I just hope that people would want to learn more about specialist liability products and want to sell it more, because it is a huge exposure.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you on that. And thank you for the comment on the thought leadership. We strive absolutely to be a platform where thought leadership and not product the whole time or promote it. So thank you for making a comment around that, because that is important for us. And all the best. Yeah, let's see how we can help the brokers and know that they, if they don't deal with you, I suppose it's fairly easy enough to get in contact with you guys. And I'm sure linking with you on LinkedIn, for example, would be one easy way. So yeah, thank you for the chat, Storm. It was really great.
Thank you
and
so
all the best. All the best for the rest of 2022.
Thank you, Rianet. You as well.